Welcome to episode number 53 of 2x2. This is unlike any other 2x2 episode that we have done. I know that we say that every week.
It's a vibe episode.
It's a vibe episode because we did an event last week on AI and how it's changing product development, and we heard the words vibe coding everywhere. So we decided, can we do a vibe 2x2 episode? No, actually, that's not the reason. The reason why we're doing this.
Please don't give people the wrong ideas. Of course, we're always super prepared for 2x2 episodes. In fact, we were looking forward to recording this key and vital look back at the last 52 weeks of 2x2. I've been looking forward to it since episode 17, I think. Right, Hari?
Hari is our producer.
What?
Who's also on the call and is strategically not saying anything over here. But yes, to our listeners, this is our 1-year anniversary. We began 2x2 a year ago and it has been 52 episodes. So we thought maybe now we deserve a special episode where we can look back at the last year, see what we did, and maybe talk a little bit about the future as well. So this week it's just Rohin and me. And you've heard my co-host Rohin already. Rohin, how are you feeling about this episode?
Thrilled, super pumped.
No guest to fall back on. It's just the two of us. I don't know how long this is going to go, but here we are.
But once again, listeners, you're used to a certain cadence, a certain level of analysis, etc., a new topic in every episode of 2x2. This is not one of those. We're going to be doing a lot of look back, reflections, learnings, sharing feedback, etc. So some of it may relate to episodes that you've heard, some of it may not, etc. And those of you who have very high standards, and especially those of you who write back after every few episodes saying this episode did not meet the mark, I did not get much value out of it, I suspect this is going to be one of those episodes where you're going to write back to us and say, this episode certainly did not meet the mark. So please, I'm warning you in advance.
Actually, when Rohin and I started this podcast, we discussed that we wanted to could we do a weekly episode, a weekly podcast on business and strategy about actual companies and what they're going through in India, and did not want to do things like the way I describe it to potential guests, I say that this is not a fireside chat, two words that I detest. And this is not a topic. This is not a podcast where we do topics like the changing evolution of the fintech sector in India. Very safe. Everybody can come talk around it. But I think this time we decided that no, we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about very specific...
who does fireside chats? The world is on fire, folks. What are you doing fireside chats for? You're literally in the fire.
Every podcast is a fireside chat. So we thought that, okay, let's do this podcast where can we talk about actual companies, what they're really going through, and real actual conflicts that are going on in sectors and in industries and in actual real situations, and get guests who are candid and speak their mind. And can we just have a discussion about it without...
Full disclosure, this is not how we talk to each other inside the Ken. Of course, we talk much more naturally and colloquially, but Praveen is extracting the strategy part of it and saying, this is how we talk. Can we talk about companies in a very interesting way? Can we get, right?
Yes.
In reality, it was very different. It was much more interesting, right, Praveen? But, enough banter. PGK, you said you'd come prepared for today's episode. Do you want to start with your prepared or should I start with my prepared?
Okay, I'll start with my prepared. And I'll tell
What's
you
your
what
prepared?
I wanted to do.
Listeners, we're going cold into this episode, truly cold, meaning I have zero idea what PGK is going to talk about in this episode. And he has zero idea. Well, generally, he has zero idea what I'm going to say anyway. But today, we're doing it live.
That is true.
Right? And we're literally recording this. You'll be surprised. We're recording this on Wednesday, which is literally the day before it's going to be published.
Yeah.
So
So Hari and
we
Raju
trust
don't
each
even
other.
have time. Yeah, they don't even have time to edit it, which is why a lot of this stuff is just going to stay in. But let me say what I prepared and came. So what I said was, I said, okay, look, we've done this for the last 1 year, and every episode was about, hey, some pattern, something is going on. Let's talk about it structurally. Let's do a 2x2 on it, which many people don't see. That's on the cover art of all of our episodes. So we said, okay, I thought individually we are covering many things and topic by topic, company by company, and it's all you're in that treadmill of creating all of those. And some of them are based on the news cycle, some of them are things about certain companies. So I said, can we just do a look back of the 52 episodes and try to extract meta narratives, themes, and patterns that tell us about what's happening in India?
Such an
So
MBA, such an MBA.
it's a business and strategy podcast called 2x2, Rohan. This is the most MBA thing you can do. But that's really what I thought I would do. And I came up with a bunch of themes, which I can talk about. But yes, that's what I did. What did you do, Rohan?
All right, I'll tell you what I did.
Huh.
And this is like one of those LLM lessons, as it turns out. It's very funny. I wanted to do something close to what you were doing, except that I didn't want it colored by my own eyes. So I thought I'll turn to Claude and Gemini Pro and ask them. And I gave it the Ken's 2x2 page, and I gave it examples of episode pages. And I told both of them, go through these and get me a list of all episodes along with all the guests. And of course, both of them start doing, formulating my plan, strategizing my plan, activating my engines, recalibrating the thrusters, all of that. And then both of them come back and say, it looks like the Ken is blocking us. And that's when I realized, damn it, yes, we do block AI scrapers from scraping our website. And I was like foiled by my own plans, right? And they came, and of course, like they gave me just like half-baked bullshit. So then I had to do it by myself, and I went episode by episode, because we've done, like you said, multiple times. We've done 52 episodes. In each of these episodes, we've done 2 guests, 3 guests, 4 guests, 1 guest at a time. So actually, I started going through them, copy pasting those guests into a document one by one. And as I did it, that's when I remembered, hey, this is what they say about learning, right? When you actually do it by hand, you actually learn. And I realized it was true. Because as I started putting guest names into a document, I was like, yeah, I remember this episode. Oh, yeah, I remember this. Interesting guest. Not so interesting guest. Of course, I'm not going to tell you who's not so interesting guest. But I realized that had either Claude or Gemini managed to succeed at doing this and giving it to me, I would have essentially got some kind of pre-analysis from it, and then my starting point would be to kind of take it forward from there. But because I didn't do that, and because I did the hard work, which is why I always tell my son, do your homework, because that's how you really learn. And I felt like that, right? I felt like I was doing my homework, I was writing it by hand, and I was typing it by hand. And then I realized, oh, you know what, these are the guests who appeared multiple times. These are the episodes where we had only 1 guest. Why did we have 1 guest? These are the episodes where we had 4 guests. Why do we have 4 guests? These are the repeat episodes. Oh man, this guy has come twice, thrice. Why do we have so few women? Oh, this was really cool episode. I remember we went places where we never planned. So in that sense, I think all the experiences came back to me, and that's why I have a document in front of me with 52 rows in it with titles of all the episodes, and below that the guests in each, right? And I think that's enough for me, because we've done these. There's enough analysis for the LLM which is inside my brain.
Fantastic. No, I'm glad that you did the guess, because the guess is the one thing that I did not do. I just did something very
See?
similar. Yeah.
Did you get an LLM to do your analysis?
No, I did not get an LLM to do my analysis, but I did used an LLM to get the extraction. So the trick, Rohin, was that I have a file with me with all the list of the titles and of the episodes that we have. So I just said, okay, here is the titles, and I just put it in 2 columns, and it just gave that to me. And I kept staring at that for a while and saying, oh, this is interesting. this looks like this. This is my muscle, Rowan. You keep telling me. This is my muscle of getting narratives and connections. I'm looking at it saying, oh, this looks like this looks like this. And then I got all of that together. And I said, okay, here are some meta themes that I've seen.
Okay, I challenge you. Give me the most interesting thing that came up from your meta-analysis and connecting the dots. No pressure.
The most interesting. Okay, fine. Let me just think. Okay, fine. I'll give you the most. Well, okay. I'll give you the most interesting. Some of these are not particularly non-obvious, but it's still a narrative and it's still a theme that you see between all of them. If you've been listening to these episodes, you would have probably heard this again and again. Okay, here's one. One of the themes that came out actually began when I started with the first episode that we did. Rohin, do you know what the first episode was? Can you tell it without looking at the sheet?
Why would I not look at the sheet? I made the sheet by hand like a while ago. Why won't I enjoy the fruits of my own labor?
Fine.
It's
Tell us.
Will Flipkart become PhonePe before PhonePe becomes Flipkart?
Yes, and we had a couple of very interesting guests for that. Now you should tell us who the guests
Professor
were. as well.
R. Srinivasan and Shrikant Rajagopalan.
Yeah. So I think that's one of my favorite episodes because I think it sort of like gave me at least a sense of what this podcast was really about. And every subsequent episode that I've done, I've tried to basically think about it as, can we match this? And the reason why it was very nice was because this comes to my most interesting theme that I found over the last year or so, which is that there is what I call a desperation-driven convergence, which means that over the last year, we have seen companies after companies are desperately trying to become other companies. All markets are up for grabs. All opportunities are up for grabs. Flipkart is an e-commerce company. FOMO-vergence. Yeah, maybe. Yes, everything is up for grabs. Flipkart, an e-commerce company trying to become a fintech company. PhonePe, a fintech company trying to become an e-commerce company, is just symbolic of all the other examples of companies that are doing that. And I can give a list of episodes that we did that sort of like touch upon that. I'll just very quickly read them out and then we can talk a little bit about it. We did an episode on how AI comes to annihilate India's SaaS companies. We did that with Sidhu Ponnappa and Sumant Raghvendra. Again, example of when AI comes, everyone is now ready to become everything. We had an episode on...
All right. You know what? I buy your point. I believe you. Since I did these episodes with you, I do know that we did enough of these episodes where somebody else is... I mean, literally, we try to do that with the 2x2, right? Somebody is moving into somebody else's turf. Somebody else is trying to escape. I buy that theme. Right? What else? Okay. Given a chance to go back, you know, that's one of my favorite questions, right? Go back a year and restart 2x2 all over again. Would you do it any differently?
The podcast itself, overall?
Yeah. Everything about the podcast.
I think I would do... Well, there are only 2 or 3 things that I would do differently. One is I would have planned much more to have a bank of episodes, but I suppose every podcaster says that.
Wow, famous last words, right? How long have you been hearing that at the Ken? I just wish we had more of a bank of stories, right? Like, I know since when I've been hearing that at the Ken. Can you tell me, which is probably going to be when you joined the Ken? When did you join the Ken?
2018.
So you've been
Early
hearing
2018.
It, right?
I
wish we had a better bank, etc. Right? What does that tell you about yourself and about generally newsrooms?
No, I'll tell you what I think. I think number one is I think the one thing that I may have changed, and I want to do this now going forward, is get more founders and CEOs. I feel like founders and CEOs talking about their businesses is very interesting, and some of our best episodes is that.
All right. I buy that. Interesting.
What would you change?
I would have mentored and coached Hari a lot more for the challenging task that he was up to. Because while we're gyrating from episode to episode, on topic to topic, companies to companies, poor guy was getting whiplash just by figuring out, guys, what's the next episode? What's the line you're going to take? please, like, so I can get it. I commiserate with his plight. So I would have done a better job. I would have been a better person. I would have been a better manager for Hari. I regret that.
Okay, fair enough. Which is
You didn't see that
more or less
coming,
what
right?
I said.
You
Which is
didn't
that
see that coming, right?
yeah, I didn't see that, but I more or less what I said. We should have been more planned. But okay, fine. What
That's
else?
not what you said. You said
It's
I would
more
have
or
had a
less.
bank of episodes. I said I would have
Yes.
managed and coached a valuable and talented employee. They're not the same, not even in the same park.
If we had a bag, everyone would get coached. Okay, go on. What else would you change?
Oh, wow. When have you heard that before? If only we could finish all these pending tasks, then we could get to the really strategic tasks. That sounds very familiar.
Fine. What else?
All right, I'll go. You didn't ask me, but I'll answer the same question I asked you. Next, as we're making this up as we go along, you get to ask me a question, right? Most interesting thing for me, and this like is just like coming up in my mind after having done the homework, is that we did the last event, the physical in-person live subscriber event that we did, which was really fun, was how AI is completely changing the world of making products, which had Sidhu Ponnappa and Kailash Nath as guests. And Kailash has appeared a couple of times on 2 by 2 and Sidhu appeared on 2 by 2. So I think without us realizing it, it was essentially the pieces were adding up. It's now we can look back at it and look at it as serendipity. Hey, but I think what happened is because 2 by 2 is this how do I put it? It's this thing which is constantly engaging and expanding our curiosity and helping us find interesting people and figuring out what they like talking about and how to kind of bring them and have a conversation with them. I think it opened the doors for us to visualize Sidhu and Kailash and of course the other folks in the event. So I think in many ways 2 by 2 was a precursor to the Ken's events as well. We didn't realize it.
True. That's correct. Okay. Fair enough. Now that you've given an answer that I can't disagree with. I agree. That's true. I was talking more about the episodes themselves by looking at it. Okay. I'll go one more.
See, this is the problem with
No, I'll go one more. I'll go one more. And I'm
the
done with it.
analysis
Okay.
must always be 2-3 orders away from it. It has to be non-obvious. It has to be interesting analysis.
Fine.
Also,
I'll
now
take this-
PGK is like, I want to have another go at it.
I want to have
a
another
really
go.
interesting.
I'll tell you
Fine.
another go.
I'll
Fine.
come. I'll also have another go after that.
Fine. I'll have another go. The thing that I did not do or we did not do in the first year is I wish we could have involved the listeners of this podcast much more. I think that every week to this
Or you're
podcast
pandering
was
to the
about-
gallery now. You're
Yeah.
oh,
Now I've
all the
decided.
listeners are
This
like
is it.
supporting me right now.
Yeah. We have
right?
such wonderful listeners. They're amazing. They're smart. I wish we could have involved them more. And I think in small ways and in big, it could be things like
All right, let me
surveys,
call
could
your
be like
bluff on it. What will you do about it going forward?
Oh, surveys, listener call-in, special listener episodes, send
When
voice
is the
notes.
first listener call in?
This is not a deadline. I can't set a deadline, but we'll do it. I promise we'll do this. Come on, we used no. The reason again because I say that is because you spoke about the event. Even in the event, we used a lot of questions and inputs that attendees gave, and it worked out very well for us. So why would that not? If this podcast can lead to an event, things that we did in the event can lead back to the podcast.
Sure. I mean, in some kind of time. What is that very famous Matthew McConaughey line?
All right.
No. Something about time being like a
time
endless...
being a circle and all that.
That's
Something like
right.
time
That's
is a
right.
circle.
Right.
Yes, fine.
That's right. All right. Fine. Do you want to ask me an interesting question?
Yes.
Or do you have another point of view about...
No, I don't
what
have a
we've
point
done?
of view. I just have one question for you, which is, what is the most interesting thing that you found out or thematically about India after doing this podcast for the last year?
It's incredibly hard to find women leaders who have enough of a rapport or trust with us to appear on a podcast which is fairly unfiltered. I mean, of course, we stick to business, but I think it's much harder, right? And I think that we've been used to, we consciously trying to feature women's sources. We are as an organization, we have like I would say like a great number of colleagues who are women. I mean, I don't know the exact ratio, no, must be like close to what,
Yeah,
50?
40% at least.
Yeah,
40 to
40 to
50%.
50%, right? So we do a lot consciously, like even in our journalism, we use words like she, or when we are trying to, like, illustrate something for a story, we consciously try to make sure that the male bias doesn't come in. But I think the hardest thing has been on 2x2, and that's obviously been a recurring criticism from many of our listeners as well. But why aren't there more women in these shows? And I think we've done this again. Like, this will sound like it's something like an excuse. Remember, we did these multiple ads over episodes saying we're looking for women founders, and, like, a bunch of folks gave us names as well, and we did reach out to many of them. But at the end of the day, we are also trying to balance people who would be comfortable enough to talk freely about a particular company, sector, etc., and all that, and know us enough and be willing to appear on the show, etc., enough. So we just haven't managed to crack that, right? Like, I think that's really hard, and I think that is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it sounded like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really sure how to solve it. I mean, we've done some things. I guess we have to keep trying, and
Yeah,
perhaps it'll work
the
out.
best way to solve any problem is to not forget about it.
Fair enough.
You can, yeah, hey, that's a Koti quote. Right? You can give that quote to me.
Sure. All right, your turn.
All right, let's okay. Lest listeners feel like this is just navel gazing, which we want it isn't. How do we think? I was just kind of looking at the arc of 2x2 episodes. A year is a fairly decent amount of time to look at how the way we select topics, the way we select guests, and the way we structure our discussions have changed. I remember when we launched, we said, look, 2x2s are not, this podcast is not going to be about pre prepared, structured discussions where we are going through our notes and we are trying to cover questions. And yet, if you remember the first few episodes, we did a lot of prep. And in fact, even now we do a lot of prep. But we actually used to have sections that we wanted to cover in a. Within
Yeah.
those sections, we had no questions, but we would say first we'll discuss this, then we move on to this, then we move on to this, etc. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's changed over time. It's become, we spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure out what is the 2x2 here, where is the central conflict, who's trying to do something, who's being held back, what shift is happening, and can we find interesting people who can talk about that. And I think beyond, a few key questions, I don't think we try to over structure it.
Yeah.
That's definitely a shift which has happened. So in some senses, okay, I'll zoom out and generalize it. I think we've been okay dropping rules as we've gotten along. We said it'll be 2x2, two hosts and two guests, and the two hosts have remained constant till now. Hopefully, in the future as well.
Yeah.
Like barring acts of God, right? But the two guests have changed. It has been one guest, it has been three guests, it has even been four guests. In the past, it would make me very uncomfortable to say, hey, this is the promise that we made. How can we deviate from its boundaries? Now I'm like, look, I mean, do not be a creature of, defined by your boundaries. Break free.
Yeah.
Give listeners what they want to. So I think that's changed. Points that you mentioned that earlier, our objective was, can we get experts who can talk about it? It has changed in many times. Like you said, one way it's changed is when we do founder specific episodes. It's no longer about, can we get an expert or two experts talk. It's like, can we get a founder to talk about their business? And of course, we'll frame it like a 2x2. So I think we've changed the rules as we've gone along, while largely keeping the basic structure constant, like sort of like the Indian constitution, right? Basic framework, and
Yeah.
then you can tinker around the edges.
Yeah, I have another observation, which is that I think as we continued doing 2 by 2, we also got more comfortable doing podcast episodes on things that have just happened, um,
Great point.
which wasn't the case earlier.
Quote unquote newsy stuff.
Newsy stuff. So, like if you think about, we did an episode on Jane Street. We didn't. I think the one that we did the fastest turnaround was the Trump tariffs, which ironically the topic selection was fantastic, but the tariffs, I don't know what happened. But yeah, we did an episode on Trump tariff, which is also one of
Yeah,
our
that
most
was
popular episodes.
that was with Mohit Satyanand then.
Yes.
And Mohit happened to be in Bangalore, and we met him, and we were recording on what, a Tuesday, I think. And
Yes.
Mohit was like, I was reading this on Sunday, and then by the evening things had changed. And then we recorded on a Tuesday, by then things had changed. And then we published on a Thursday, and by then things had changed, right? So
Yeah.
that's the Trump world for you, right? Flood the zone with shit.
Yeah, and the part where both of these sort of like came together was we did this episode with on Razorpay and PhonePe confronting the JustPace box. Which
The
basically
JustPay
got
CEO,
yeah,
Vimal
it
Kumar
had,
was there.
it had Vimal was a JustPay CEO who came on board, and it was something that had just come in the news. So it sort of like hit everything. It is like big companies, CEO coming in, and of course something that has just happened in the news. And yeah, those are like
I think this is a great, teaching moment for me, to all these people, to all the folks who pitch leaders to me or PGK and saying so and so is the leader as this company. These are so and so's accomplishments.
yeah.
It would be great if they could be featured on the 2 by 2 podcast. So firstly, there is no featuring of people on the 2 by 2 podcast. Second, there is a reason why we typically reach out to founders or people that we know, because we know that it's not going to be mediated by 3 levels of Corpcom and global and PR, and then they'll do a pre-call with us, and even then they will not say anything, right? So please, I mean, any of you, right? If you are from a sector, if you're a founder, if you're an operator, if you're an investor, hey, we've got investors who've been on the show as well, right? The only, I think, requirement that we have is that you should be willing to stand up for what you believe in and speak your mind.
True. Okay, fair. What else? I just want to just go back to my list. I'm going to go back to my list, Rohin, of themes. Okay, because I think the themes are.
Oh
very
yeah,
important.
your list. Yeah,
Of-
what's your list? What
Okay,
are the
my
themes
list.
that come up? Tell me.
So, like I said, one of the themes was around desperation-driven convergence.
FOMO versions.
FOMO versions, yeah. So Flipkart wants to be PhonePe, PhonePe wants to be Flipkart, food delivery wants to be quick commerce wants to be food delivery, SaaS companies want to be AI companies want to be SaaS companies, super app. So there are multiple stories and episodes that we did about everyone trying to become everybody else, which I thought was a lot of fun. I think I'll give another one, and the other one is actually interesting. And this is actually, to be really honest, I feel like this is more of Rohin's interest than mine. So I'll let Rohin talk about this. But I noticed when I went back and looked at it, we did a lot of episodes about regulations. And I think regulations are generally a very boring topic, but I feel like we have tried to make it very interesting with some of the episodes that we have done, where the government is shaping markets and not just through rules. Sometimes it's becoming a player. So it creates, I think my meta point is that it's actually creating this thing like a what I call an artificial constraint economy, where innovation is happening because regulation exists that prevents some people from doing some things. What's stopping? We did an episode on 10-minute alcohol delivery. We did an episode on how Airtel fights spammers again, one of the regulation gap that comes into it. One of the fun episodes, the mystery of usury, where the RBI banned some NBFCs from participating. We also did a very specific episode called the relentless rise of the government as a competitor. So Rohin, question to you: tell us about this regulation, government, and how you see this, and what's really driving your interest in this, because this is something that we did a lot of last year.
I don't think it's conscious. I just look at what's happening, and I'm not one of those people who looks at regulation as a space and say we need to have more regulation stories in our mix, right? To use a cliche, I'm more of the at the intersection of things. As it turns out, regulation pretty much intersects with every virtual business in India. Every sector you can look at intersects, and you can read about that in the newspaper. So it just stands out to me. I mean, I love what's happening under the waters, behind the scenes, and that's usually powerful people pulling strings that you can't see. I'm drawn to that, right? And that's usually regulators. So it's subconscious, but I think it's just that. You mentioned an episode which I think is like, if I had to say, is there an episode where, with the benefit of hindsight, you'd say that you got things wrong? I think it's the Airtel episode. I remember when the Airtel episode came out, we sniggered at their AI-driven approach. I said that they're trying to take on Truecaller's business model and how will this work, etc. But I must tell you, the number of spam calls have dramatically dropped since then, right? Like, to the extent that these days, if somebody is calling me and it says suspected spam, there is no way I'm picking it up. In the early days, when we did the episode, it was still, I think, tuning days for Airtel's model. So you'd have, Swiggy or Zomato delivery folks, or DHL or delivery folks, etc., miscategorized as spam. I think that's gone. And now I think whatever, partnerships, deals, processes they have at the back end with all the service providers have gone dramatically well. So I mean, would we do the episode? Absolutely. Right. But did I think that Airtel would be able to nail it so quickly and so well? I don't think so. So I think there, it's mea culpa.
Okay. Fair. Should I continue with my themes unless you have something
Yes,
else?
please.
Okay. Themes. Let me see. One more theme that I saw. Okay, great. Okay, here is a theme that really stands out, and I would like to believe this is different, which is what I call the great career existential crisis. And I think this was stark. Like, I think I think there were some of the episodes that we talked about were about various careers that are going through all kinds of existential problems. No one knew what's really going on. So if you look at, say, how traditional career paths are being questioned, entire roles are facing problems. And I'm just telling you the every single role that we did a episode on, and all the episodes are a variant of what's the future of this. The current situation of this is going to be very different. We did one on engineers. In fact, we did two on engineers. We did on engineers, we did on product managers, we did on marketers, we did on consultants. So it's not just tech, it's all of these careers are changing, and nobody knows what's really going to happen going forward. So, and of course, we also did slightly broader ones, which is about why has all the excitement gone out of startups, which is one of our earlier episodes. We had this other episode on GCCs eating into Indian IT companies. So all of this sort of points to this great career reset. And I will say that this was even before AI became as existential as it is right now. Many of these were episodes that were before we were really sure about what AI could do.
Got it. All right.
So my question to you, Rohan, is that
Yeah.
because you've been covering this for a while, do you genuinely think, because it's very fashionable to say something is changing with careers, something is changing with careers, but because you've been seeing this entire thing for over a longer arc, both of us have, but you slightly longer.
I'm
than me.
older, so I've seen it over a
slightly
longer. I
longer.
get
Okay.
the implied ageism there.
Sure. So the question that I have for you is that, do you think that the focus on careers that we had over the last year is deserved? Are careers fundamentally changing? Something seems to have changed, and I don't think it's like the same as what it was before.
I mean, you know my answer. My answer is absolutely. Like, if you have any doubt that they're not changing, you're in for a very rude shock, no matter how secure a career you're in right now, right? So that's the only thing that I'll say. Please don't wait for things to happen and things to come to a crisis point before you decide to do something about it. Better start doing something about it right now. I mean,
Yep.
I'm paranoid. I'm anxious. And Praveen, I'm not generally a very anxious or paranoid person. I'm a very
Not
chill.
at all. As you can tell from the podcast. Yes. But no,
No,
it
okay.
does feel very, very scary. Go on.
I'll tell you what we've goofed up, and I think we really have to be sorry about. And I think I'll say this upfront, is our damn paid podcast strategy.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Listeners, firstly, I must apologize. We were always clear from the time we launched 2 by 2 that this was going to be a premium podcast. And access to it would come either via a subscription to the Ken, or you could subscribe to it directly for just the podcast. But I think we got carried away. We got too clever by half. We made it an individually paid podcast first, and a bunch of you started paying. Then we moved it under a Ken channel where we tried to create free podcasts and paid podcasts, etc. And now we're in our final and third iteration of it, which is there is just one Ken channel and all our paid podcasts are under it. And you just need to pay a single monthly subscription fee on Apple Podcasts if you only want to listen to our podcast, right? Of course, if you subscribe to the Ken, you get all our podcasts for free. That hasn't changed. But I think I'm talking about the experience outside of the Ken subscription. If you were on Apple Podcasts, which is the only place right now where we offer paid podcasts separate from the Ken, you must have had a little bit of a rough ride because we've tried to do these things firsthand. Honestly, there aren't many examples in India to learn from, and even globally, many of the examples come from institutions like NYT, Economist, FT, etc. It's very hard for us to be able to kind of shape our own product based on such behemoths. So we've made some mistakes. I think they're all behind us now. So that's something I think we've not done a good job of, but we will be doing a stellar job of right now. Apologies, but also great times ahead. What do you think, Praveen? I mean,
No, that's absolutely correct.
you've been a product manager, right?
No, please don't do
If
that.
you could go back, if you could go back and reimagine the 2 by 2 product.
I'll tell you what I would do. Okay, if there are only two things. The first thing that I would have done if I had to go back and do it, right? I would have just kept 2 by 2 for the Ken subscribers on the app, because that is the constant. You always start with a constant. and
How
then you
how do
build on top of it.
non-subscribers listen to 2 by 2 then?
They subscribe to the Ken and they listen to the podcast as part
I
of
get
the
it. I
offering.
mean, I'd love
Not
that.
ideal,
That,
not
like
ideal,
just
not
to
ideal.
listen to this podcast, you got to subscribe to the Ken. I mean,
Well, if I was in a room arguing this with a CEO, I would say that, well, Mr. CEO, well, our stories are the same. People have to subscribe to the Ken to read our stories. Why should our podcast be any different? But again, that's one. I'll tell you the second thing, though. This is not really a mess up, but I think this is something that we didn't think it through, or we experimented too much. One of the two is, both of them are probably true. And that was not just the paid podcast, also the free podcast strategy. Because there are parts of it that we put out for free. I think in the beginning we said, oh, let's do a edited short version of it, which was probably 10 minutes. And we said, oh,
yeah,
let's
I
do
remember
it.
those clever by days.
Yeah, then we said, let's
the
do
free
30-minute
versions got to be
versions.
so appealing that like someone would want to listen to just that, and if they just listen to that, that's fine by us. And we put a
Yeah.
lot of thought into that.
So I met someone last week, and I'm not going to name him, but he's probably listening to this podcast.
That's
so
a him. All right. Give
it's
us
a
some
him.
more hints.
He
Okay,
was-
fine. That's one question.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
he
So he
work
appeared as
in
a
Bangalore?
guest on. Yes. Okay, so
Okay,
wait,
that's
let me finish
two.
the story. So he appeared as a guest on this podcast, a very senior person. And
Oh, that reduces it to 4 people now. Okay.
wait.
Cool.
And then it turns out that he was very excited that he appeared on the Ken's podcast. And this was one of our earlier, when we were going through all of these episodes. And at that point in time, he said, at the end of the episode, he said, how do I share this with my friends and family to listen to it? And I said, well, it's right now it's a paid pod. Ask them to subscribe to the Ken, and we were building something on gifting links and all that. And then I met his brother, who's a good friend of mine, and he said that to this
Oh,
day,
now I got it.
to this day, I have not listened to the whole episode. I have heard your 5-minute version, 7-minute version, 20-minute version, 30-minute version, but I have never heard the whole episode. What is wrong with you guys? Why can't you just release it already? So that's when I realized, yeah, actually, we were doing a lot of experimentation back then.
Yeah.
But now it's much more predictable. I'm just telling this to listeners as well. Like if you're a subscriber to the Ken, you get the episode immediately. Non-subscribers get it after like 4 weeks or so
4
for
weeks, yeah.
for a period of time. So yeah. But the only way to get access to all of 2 by 2 and to continue to keep access to 2 by 2 is by either subscribing to it on the Ken and listening to it on the app, or Apple Podcasts, and you can get that there as well.
And hopefully we should be available. We should be able to make our paid podcasts available on other platforms like Spotify too very soon.
Yes, we are working with them.
Fingers crossed.
Paid podcast is a new thing for a lot of platforms, so it's not entirely us. Let me just say that.
All right, let me switch tracks a bit and read out a recent feedback email from a listener. I'm not going to name the listener. I think I waited a while to share this honest feedback with you, but here it goes. Topics of discussion in the episodes are often a repeat or expansion of something that's already been written in a Ken article. I'm not sure if this is the case with everyone, but I've always read the articles and there's no point in me paying for a podcast which only repeats stuff I've learned before. This makes me not want to check which episodes are coming out. Honestly, I haven't written back to the subscriber yet. I will. I don't know where this is coming from. I hope this is not us being conflated with Daybreak, where
Correct.
Snigdha and Rahel typically pick stories that often which the Ken has done and riff and extend those. But very few of the 2x2 episodes have been based directly on any Ken story. Of course, they do reference many of the stories that we've done in the past. But very few of them. Maybe recently
It's
one I could think
possible,
of
yeah.
is Jane Street. I think
Exactly,
maybe
that's what I was going to say. It's
yeah.
possible that the
This is
subscriber
a
saw
yes,
the Jane
that's right.
Street
This is
episode.
a recent email. It's dated July 19. So it's possibly that's a trigger, right? Like the Jane Street. But otherwise, I can't think of many which have just been based on. That said, person
no,
has
we haven't.
2 or 3 other points. Even if the podcasts are an expansion or article, there seems to be no value add for the first half or most of it. The hosts are not extremely educated. Thank you. And the topic, and almost as if they're trying to learn on the episode. Well, I thought that was a feature, not a bug. I thought my curiosity and open mindedness and that of Praveen in trying to actually learn was actually a feature of this podcast. Honestly, I'm not kidding. We didn't want to come across as know-it-alls who are just trying to quiz people who are operators who've worked in sectors or in companies much longer than we have and know much more by trying to know it all. So we do our prep, but in general we try to keep like an open and curious mind, so that the real answers and insight comes from our guests and not from us.
Since we're talking about listener
wait,
feedback, if
I'm
you're
not
done.
done.
Finish your
I'm
point.
not saying this is a bad thing since the audience is trying to learn too, but the repetitive, uneducated questions from the host is what starts to annoy and waste time, even if the guest is trying to add value. On top of this, there is too much of an attempt at trying to be funny. I
will try
don't
to
know
be
what
less
to
funny.
say. Yes, I think this is on Praveen. Like he's the funny guy between the two of us. I'm the serious guy,
Sure.
right? So I think there's just too much of Praveen in this. Like Praveen, you gotta stop with your funniness. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to be, all jokes are going to stop from now on. No, I have only one point. We do get a lot of very positive feedback as well. But I'll tell you one consistent. And
But
this
don't
is
get defensive.
No, let me finish. This is a consistent feedback that we have gotten probably from episode 1 all the way till now. What is the most consistent feedback you think we have gotten, Rohin? Not positive, negative feedback about 2x2 that we've gotten all the way from beginning till now. The one consistent theme. We spoke about themes. If I had to boil all of it into one, what would that be? The most thing that shows up the most.
I know. Let me guess. Is that part of your feedback for me as a manager also?
Sometimes. Sometimes. But you want
Is
to
it
tell
that I
us?
speak too much and interrupt
No.
too much and
Interruptions.
I don't let...
Interruptions. I think one of the things that listeners
Where is that
kept
coming
saying,
from?
Yeah, I wonder why. Okay, no. I think one of the things, like I said, that listeners kept saying was, I like the podcast. Can you just let other people speak without interrupting? And I don't think, to be fair, it's not specific to Rohin. I think it's for everybody who's on the podcast. They say there's too much interruptions. Even if you go to our YouTube, and I don't really check YouTube comments much. I used to in the earlier
YouTube
days.
comments are the best.
They are the best. So there also, that's filled with a lot of comments that says, too much interruption going on, too much interruption going on. Let people speak, let people speak. And I want to just throw it to Rohin. And this is one of the feedback that we've always seen. But quite frankly, we have done nothing about it. Intentionally. Intentionally. I mean it.
So I will tell you, let me give you my answer, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't know what your answer is. Like, why you decided not to do anything about it all. Like, in spite of being the chief operating officer of the Ken, when subscribers write to you and
Sure.
give you valuable and actionable feedback, you're like, we just decided not to do anything about it. And guess what? I'll just pose the question to my CEO and put
Oh,
him on the
fine.
spot, right? That's fine. Fine. I'll take that. Like, the buck stops with me today.
Sure. Go for it. I'll give you my answer after that.
Right. So, I host another podcast called First Principles. Um, if you haven't subscribed to First Principles, you should. It's a leadership podcast. It's a long form podcast. There, it's a single guest. It's a single founder. Conversations run about 2 hours. I started with Kabir Biswas, the founder of Dunzo, who's now with Flipkart Minutes, who's also a very good friend. And I think the first few episodes I do normally tend to kind of speak a lot and interrupt a lot. That's just because in a real conversation, if I was not recording and I was sitting next to someone and having a real conversation, that's how I would talk, right? Because I would interrupt them and ask them, etc. And I know them enough to know when it's a good conversation and not. So, folks did write back to me and say, look, this is a leadership and learning podcast, and we want to learn from the founders that you're speaking to. So, let them complete their thoughts. And I got that, right? And I did dial down, I tried to keep my curiosity in place, but kind of in my mind, 1, 2, 3, 4, let them complete their thought, let them complete their thought. And now it's become invisible. I don't even do the counting now. Amazing, right? What self discipline can teach you. That's on First Principles. But on 2 by 2, 2 by 2 is a discussion podcast. It is not an interview podcast. It is not a sermon podcast. It is not a, hey, if you've invited guests, we would like to hear from them podcast. It is not, unapologetically. It is a discussion where we will challenge the guests, we will make jokes if they are taking the conversation in a particular line, which we think we have a good sense of what listeners find interesting, which we find interesting. Sometimes, if it's going in that direction, we'll let them speak. Sometimes we'll interrupt and say, but that's not what we were talking about, but what about this, etc. Because it's a real conversation. We are there in the room with them, we are engaging in a real conversation. We don't have a set of questions in front of us which we ask and say, wait for 2 minutes, let them complete their answer. Now go to question 27 and ask them and get them complete their answer. That's not how it works, right? That's a real conversation. Of course, the only way I can explain this to you is that if 4 of you were in a room and were having an animated discussion on an interesting topic, no one sits and asks a question and the remaining 3 people don't sit quietly and wait for one person to finish. Of course, sometimes it happens. If one person is saying something super fantastic, interesting, everybody is just sitting and watching and listening to them, right? That doesn't happen all the time. So in a real conversation, that's what happens. In fact, when we start recording episodes of 2 by 2, one of the things that we actually tell our guests, and if you've been a guest on 2 by 2, you'll all know this, is that please, this is a discussion podcast. This is an unscripted, organic conversation podcast. So please switch off your polite Zoom behavior. Please do not wait for everyone to complete their point and then come in. Please do not raise your hands to make your point, right? You are absolutely welcome to interrupt, crack jokes, etc., because we want it to sound like an organic, real, authentic conversation. That's why, in spite of your feedback, I think we've taken your feedback, we've understood it, we've just not chosen to go overboard with it. I think we've tweaked it a bit,
Yeah.
but I don't think we've done a lot with it, and that's consciously, right? So that's
Yeah.
my answer as to why I'm in the First Principles host persona, quieter and willing to let people, even though I continue to occasionally get feedback there also saying, let them complete this thing. It's disrespectful, like, which I feel is a very Indian thing, that, like, when you're having a conversation, if you interrupt someone, it shows disrespect, like BS. Right?
Yeah.
But on 2 by 2, it's different. That's my answer. Long, winded answer. Praveen, what about you?
Yo,
Why
mine
did
is
you
a
decide not to do anything about it?
okay. I'll give two parts of it. I think again, I feel like one thing that I observed after doing 2 by 2 for a while is there are two kinds of listeners. Listener type 1 is the one who listens to a podcast for the quote unquote the experience of it. And listener type 2 is the one who listens to it and asks for what are the key takeaways? Give me
Yes,
the
listener
10
type
bullet
2 is the
points.
one who puts it. Can you share the transcript, please, so that I can put it into Chat GPT and
And
generate the learnings out of it and like the action
correct.
items out of it? This podcast did not have enough action items for me to implement.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not here to judge the kind of listener. If you that's your thing, that's cool. Let's go with it. It's fine. I feel that, and I think the time I remember distinctly the time where I was really conflicted about it. I thought, oh, I should probably reduce this. We should do change some things. But the time that I really changed my mind about this and decided not to do anything was when Google released Notebook LLM. And Google had this wonderful, interesting thing where they said, you can just put up an entire document here. And what Notebook LLM will do is it will quote
It's
unquote.
just Notebook LM, I think, right?
It's Notebook LM. Sorry, Notebook
I
LM,
think so,
right?
yeah.
It says that Notebook would generate a podcast. So it's actually what it does. It says, you give me the entire document. What I'll do is I'll spin up these two imaginary people having a podcast discussion about this topic. And some people were sharing it online and on social media. And I listened to some of it. And oh my God, it sounded exactly like those. Hey, this is such a great point. What do you have to say about this? And the other person would say that. And all of it is AI generated. And that's when I realized that I suspect that podcasts like that are going to very quickly sound inauthentic and are going to sound like machines. So we should just lean into what we are doing. And for listener type 2 who want takeaways and summaries, I'm pretty sure that at some point in time, either through the platform or through the Ken or through their uploading this on ChatGPT, they'll be able to get their summaries without having to go through the experience of it. And I felt
We're
like
not going to make it easy for you.
we're not going to make it easy, but I thought we should stick to the experience. So that's my thing, really. But I will say one feedback that I got that I internalized and I changed, lest listeners think that we are ignoring all their feedback. One of the feedback that I got very early on was you explain too much and set everything up in the beginning. It's too long. Get to the point so that we can start the discussion. And I've taken that to heart. And if you see, my introductions have plummeted. I probably just do introductions for like a line or two, and then I say, okay, let's get started. Sometimes we do cold opens as well. And that has been fun. Comes back to your earlier point of less preparation.
Yeah. Less preparation is a feature, not a bug.
Okay, fair enough. What else? I think I'm going back to my themes. Okay, one theme that, again, I don't know if this was accidental, but we covered this theme consistently, which was the destruction and the retreat of big tech in India. And I think that last year, it didn't happen
What
last year.
destruction, man? Google is killing it. Facebook is killing it. Amazon is killing it. Netflix is killing it. Like, who's retreating?
No, again, okay, we can talk about whether we got this right or got this wrong. But I think you look at the episodes that we did. We talked about Google Pay, whether it was big,
right,
successful,
right.
vulnerable. Why Stripe could not become the Stripe of India. Netflix and its last growth market in India. Are we past peak Amazon India? And of course, the one exception to this was YouTube. And we did an episode on that as well. How YouTube is absolutely killing it in India.
Hey, I realize we haven't done a episode on Meta.
We haven't done an episode on Meta. It's a hard company to cover, but we should actually. Maybe we should think of a Meta episode. Something on WhatsApp or Facebook. Let's figure that out. But yeah, but I think it didn't happen last year, but I felt like the analysis of it happened last year, where it was like, okay, what really happened here with all of these companies? Those were like fun episodes. But also, I will say very difficult episodes to get guests for, because there are very few people who are willing to come on the record and talk about, because usually they are either former executives at these companies, and very hard to get people to talk about them candidly. But we did our best.
Yeah, I mean, the most common disclaimer, like next to anonymous sources in the Ken stories, right? So and so declined to share their name for fear of professional repercussions or something equivalent, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we live in a world where not only can you not talk about your current employer, you can't talk about your past employer, you can't talk about your competitors, you can't
Yeah.
talk about your regulators, which leaves, that set of people, and therefore we get those pitched to us. I think I now got it. The set of people who are pitched to us as so and so is a leader who wants to be featured on the 2x2 episode or 2x2 podcast is non-intersecting with, we'll talk about own company, we'll talk about X company, we'll talk about rival company, we'll talk about regulator. What is left after all of this is the people who are being pitched to 2 by 2 will talk about.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, I now get it. I now have a unified theory of
Yeah.
why it never works out.
And the topics that they want to talk about are things like the big India opportunity ahead.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like
what
that.
I call, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, zero piss off, like, zero people to piss off.
Yeah.
You can, like, say things which absolutely, like, why UPI is the next global opportunity, why UPI is going to take over the world, or like why anything, like, I mean, the obvious is the obvious.
Yeah.
We're also contrarians, I think, right? Isn't that a general theme that cuts across a lot of the journalism at the Ken, and of course, by extension, in 2 by 2 as well? Like, many of our topic selections and framing have always been contrarian, right? Is Zapto a gold medalist or a bronze medalist? Which, of course, was based on one of our stories. Delhi pricked the Bengaluru bubble. Again, contrarian. Swiggy needed to reclaim its past glory. We said this way ahead of time. Private coaching is eating away at schooling. Contrarian.
Even Ola Electric was a little ahead of its time. Like, I mean, of course, it's still being played out, but that time it was a little ahead of
Do
its
we
time.
need product managers?
Very ahead of its time.
Yeah.
I think that would
Can
be
venture capitalists do no wrong? Right?
arguably
Death
late.
of D2C.
Yeah.
If B schools were invented today, would students run placements? That was the first episode where we got Professor Varun Nagraj, who's the Dean of SPGen, Institute of Management Research, who we met in person last week, who was also at our event. So again, I think 2 by 2 has led us to connections which we'd never thought of normally. We met Professor Nagraj through 2 by 2, and we've met a bunch of professors, right? From
Yeah.
IIM Bangalore.
Yeah.
Bangalore. Sorry, I'm just mixing
Yeah,
Bangalore.
we had
IIM
Professor Saurabh
Bangalore.
Mukherjee, who was also there
IS
at one of our events.
That's
And
right. Professor
yeah.
R. Srinivasan.
Professor R. Srinivasan,
Professor
Professor
Rishikesha
Rishikesh,
Krishna, who was
Professor
the
Rishikesh
director. And
was the
now is
director and also the judge for the case competition that we did last year, again through 2 by 2.
That's
So
right.
all of these helped out. Another theme, again, this is something that I want us to talk about very briefly. We started off 2 by 2 thinking and believing that it is a business and strategy podcast, and we stuck to it for the most part. But once in a while, we went and ventured a little bit orthogonal and did some episodes just based on things that interested us, caught our attention, or
Let me
things that we
guess. Who broke
cared about.
Bengaluru and how do we fix our cities?
Yeah, things that we care about. So I think one of the things, the general theme, if I had to put it in, is this what I call the livability crisis in India, which is, again, there are many episodes like this, which is, of course, one of them is what you said, which is about who broke Bengaluru. And this was about Bangalore, the city's traffic and roads and everything else. We did episodes on travel.
Air pollution also.
Air pollution.
Who and how do you incentivize to solve India's air pollution problem?
Yes. We also did on travel, which is why are people leaving India for experiences. We did that as well. And yeah, so there were some nice, interesting episodes. Oh, there's also this great episode that we did on humanely on food.
Yeah.
And
How
on this
big
thing.
is the market for treating farmed animals humanely?
Correct.
It was the episode where we had 4 guests, including 3 founders.
Yes. We had the other episode we had 4 guests was the one where we talked about food delivery companies trying to become quick commerce companies, and we had 4 guests, which was also a fun episode. Everyone interrupting each other. It was great, but it was one of the best episodes. I really enjoyed it.
Interesting. Why do you think, and now I'm switching on a little bit of a philosophical hat, why do you think you enjoy conversations in which everyone is interrupting each other?
Because it just shows that everyone cares and everyone has a point of view, and that point of view is they just can't wait to get it out, and they're all like getting it back and forth. There's a lot of back and forth.
Aren't those the best discussions that you've been part of? Animated discussions where there's crosstalk and people are giving different perspectives as opposed to just like round robin style, quote unquote, fireside chats.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, what do we do uh, for the next year? What would you do differently before you? So look, I mean, you're not asking me any questions, so I get to answer or ask all the questions, right? What
Okay.
would you do if you put on your product manager hat and learnt everything from the past 1 year, good things, bad things, feedback, everything, and you came out with a new strategy for 2 by 2 from next year? What would you do differently? And specifics only, no directional items, no motherhood, apple pie sort of answers.
No, no, specifics. I think number one
One
specific
you've already said.
one I already
Um,
said, involve
yeah,
the listeners more in some ways, either in
that's right.
terms of like contributions, ideas, surveys, etc. So
You
I want
said
to hear more.
Collins.
Collins as well. Yes, all of those. That's one. Um, the
On second
second
thoughts,
thing,
this would have been a brilliant episode for a Colin, right?
yeah, it would have. If we weren't busy with an event that we did just 3 days back. But yes. No, I think the second thing that I really want to do, but I feel like we're already doing it, is events, which is I would love to do a live 2 by 2 recording with like 3 or 4 guests, but that's more or less what we do with our events. So perhaps something like that. That's two. Product manager hat. I think I don't have a very specific answer, but I have a very specific problem to solve. And the very specific problem I want to solve is how do you get 2 by 2 to people who are at this point where podcast is equal to video podcast. By the way, Rohin, I must tell you, we are probably the very, very, very few non-video podcasts out there. And a lot of people now, when they see podcasts and they think of podcasts, they just assume it's a video podcast and they're very perplexed that this does not have a video on it. Now, this does not mean we'll start video, but I think that's something I want to think about and see
It
how to
makes no
address.
sense. I get it. Like, how can someone be perplexed that an audio product does not have video? I get that you may appreciate that YouTube has done an impeccable job of converting its video market share leadership into audio market leadership by subtly getting people to get accustomed to listening to audio with something on screen. But that is not the core feature of a podcast.
No, but that's
Really, I
not
mean,
true. I mean, it's not just YouTube, Rohan. Even if you look at Spotify, Spotify has video
yeah, I mean,
almost
that's,
embedded into its
yeah,
podcasts.
because I mean, what do I say? Gen Zs and Gen Alpha, right?
And
Vertical video
how long
format.
before?
New York Times homepage is so frustrating because it's just videos of their journalists talking about their stories, and I'm like, bro, I'll just like read your story. Let me read the story. I have to like literally. It's like there used to be a time when you went into a media website, this thing, it was I sign up for a newsletter, like, here is an offer, etc. Now I have to get past videos of the journalists who wrote the stories in order to go and read their stories.
Yeah. But I will say
No.
this to listeners
Maybe we
that
should just let AI generate videos of us and just like plaster it. Here, take videos. You want videos, take
interestingly,
videos.
just today, Google came out with a product. It's an experimental product. I think it's called Opal, which does exactly this, where you can upload a bunch of text and it creates like almost like an explainer video out of it, completely using stick figures and stuff. So I suspect we are not very far away from it.
Wait, like let's cut to the chase, na. So Notebook LM was upload something and we'll turn it into a podcast. Now you're saying like upload something, we'll turn it into video. Now I'm saying like why upload? Like why is that upload? Where did you get this upload data from? How did you get it? Are you doing some original research? Who are you? You're certainly not doing any original research. We know that, you know that, right? So all you're saying is you're giving a prompt and you're essentially saying, make me a video podcast on XYZ prompt. Fine, just listen to it. No. What
Yeah.
do I say?
Yeah, see, this is the kind of stuff that makes product management very difficult. But I will say this one last thing, which is that as much as the feedback that we get from listeners and viewers about being perplexed about not having, why can't I see a video of the two of you talking or the four of you talking or whoever it is talking, the people who are the most relieved and happy and enthusiastic that there is no video are actually the guests. And this is a consistent theme all across 2 by 2. Whenever I reach out to guests and I say, would you like to appear on 2 by 2? They listen to everything and they say, okay. Then they say, is there a video? And I said, no, we don't have a video. And they're like, oh, thank God, I'm really happy. And I would love to come. So people are very uncomfortable with video because sometimes they get worried that it can be spliced and cut into reels and all kinds of things can happen to it.
And it's not just that, folks, your listeners, right? If you're ever appearing on a podcast, like, any podcast, right? And if somebody's going to have a conversation with you for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, and the camera is going to be trained on your face throughout, trust me, you will get conscious. You're conscious. Am I smiling right now? Should I be looking at now? Did I just roll my eyes at this point that this person made?
Rohin, I
Etc.
think we've just uncovered the mystery of why young people don't switch on their cameras in
Yeah,
Zoom
but
meetings.
do you realize the
See the
incredible
thing now.
dissonance in it? They will
Yes.
not switch on their camera when it's a Zoom call, but they want the rest of the world to switch on their camera and create video podcasts so that they can see them. Do you see it?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons. But again, like I said, I don't have an answer, but I feel like that's something I want to think about.
You know what? I'll make a video podcast when all our listeners are willing to join us on the video podcast and keep their cameras on all through the time. Right? That's when we make a video podcast. You and us, we are in this together. Challenge.
What are you doing? Oh, I'm watching the Ken's podcast. I have to switch on my video to
Yeah.
watch the Okay, fine. Awesome. All right. I think those are some of the most interesting things. So what else do I want to do next year? I'm just thinking. One last thing. I said I would involve the listeners through call-ins, surveys, etc. I want to resolve this video thing in some way. I said events, but we're already doing events in some way. Get more founders, get more women. And I think that's about it for now. Continue to do topics that are interesting, fun, big companies, strong conflicts, great guests. Continue to do interruptions and discussions. That's more or less where I am right now. What about you, Rohit? Tell us.
Thought you'd never ask.
Yes, I'm asking now.
All right. So I think I have a more supersized version of your ask, which is all these I get it. Like for the last 1 year, I've been just hearing these feedback. This, you don't do this right. You don't do this right. Why don't you do this, etc. I want to turn it around on its head and set up a community of 2x2 listeners and see, you give us ideas. You help figure this out. You don't like these topics, suggest story topics. You don't like the guests who are there, suggest guests itself. And occasionally, I would actually like to record episodes with just 2x2 listeners, right? Because I think we've got an interesting, really diverse bunch of listeners, not just from India. I've seen the stats, right? We've got, I think India is the largest market of listeners, followed by the US, and then a bunch of other countries around the world, right? So it's a fairly diverse listenership. So genuinely, jokes apart, I would like to set up a community, right? Again, of misused word, everybody wants to create a community, but truly, I think we do have a proto community with 2x2 already. I would like to turn it into a real community where we are in it together and we take ideas, guests, points of view, future episodes, whatever surveys, questions, in-person meetings, etc. around 2x2, so we can do much more than what we currently do, right? That's definitely something that I don't think we've managed to create a great system around it. So it sort of becomes this ad hoc thing which one of us has to figure out with every episode. Hey, should we do a survey for next episode? Okay, we should have already done it. Damn it, I'll do it for the next one, and then we forget for the next one. Or it's like, I did this, what do I do with these 50 responses that I got? So it sort of becomes, and of course, Praveen and I are doing a bunch of other stuff as well, right? Which is not an excuse. We genuinely enjoy doing 2x2. So that's my, I think, primary goal, North Star goal from 2x2 for the next 12 months is to involve our listeners and community more to actually shape and create it, not just get their feedback in retrospect and saying you should have done this differently. Instead, tell us what we should do differently going forward. That's what I'd love to do.
Okay, fantastic.
What a great discussion, if I may say so myself. I think we should generate a transcript of this and send it to everyone who said, why don't you guys share transcripts? Here, you wanted transcripts? Here, take your transcript. I'm just kidding. We're not sharing transcripts.
Yeah, never. There are no takeaways. Okay, anyway, sorry. Go on.
Hey, that should be our tagline. It's like Seinfeld, right? No lessons. Like, what was it? Seinfeld was like, no hugging,
No learning.
no hugging, no
No
learning.
learning.
That's right,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, 2 by 2's this thing is that no hugging, no takeaways.
That's it. Done. We'll do it.
That's it. On that note, no hugging, no takeaways. Thank you so much for being a listener for as much of the 52 episodes that we've done. I hope you'll stick around. We're going to do a lot more interesting episodes. You might hear us interrupting guests, but trust me, we'll never put through an episode which just seems, what is this, looks like, they weren't also interested in this, and what is this random episode, right? Episode will always be interesting. We'll always do the hard work to make sure you find great people, etc. You may choose to disagree with our methods, but never with the quality and the effort that we put in.
Yeah. I've had so much fun doing 2 by 2, and I look forward to having fun.
And no hugs.
And no hugs. Not having fun is not an option over the next weeks, months, and years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 2 by 2. This episode was researched and produced by Hari Krishna, with mixing and mastering done by a resident sound engineer, Rajiv CN. If you feel there's something we've missed out in this discussion, or you feel some numbers or facts don't add up, you can write to us with your thoughts at 2by2@theken.com. And if you're listening to this episode on Apple Podcasts, please show us some love for the podcast by leaving us a rating. Lastly, if you loved the episode, share it with people, friends, family members, colleagues who you feel might find it insightful as well. We'll be back next week with another exciting discussion and 2 by 2 for you to think about.